Welcome back, my friends, to another edition of The Woggers Way. I'm Uncle Brian with Woggers General Services in Las Vegas, Nevada, and today I'm going to show you how to clear a clog in your bathroom sink. I'm going to show you the easy way, I'm going to show you the right way, and yes, I'm going to show you the Woggers Way. If you have a slow draining bathroom sink, or maybe one that doesn't drain at all, don't worry, it's a common issue. But it's one that can be fixed very easily. And the nice thing about it is it only takes a $3 tool. But if you don't have access to where to get the tool, or you don't want to spend the $3, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do it even without buying that tool, and do it for free. So let's jump into it. If you have standing water in the sink, the first step is to try to get most of it out as possible. You don't need to do this, but it just makes it a lot easier and cleaner later on when we start clearing out the clog. So you can use a sponge, a rag, or if you have a shop vac, or the way I like to do it, your sister's favorite coffee mug. All the magic is going to take place underneath your sink. So go ahead and clean out all that stuff that you've been stashing down here for the last few years. You know, all that stuff that you think you need, but you never look at. Oh yeah, you know who you are. All right, let's do it. Just so you have an understanding of what I'm going to show you, let me give you a rundown on the parts of your drain, how everything works, and the two places that the clog is going to be located.
Inside the sink, you'll have the drain flange and the pop-up stopper. Underneath the sink, you'll have the drain assembly, which contains all the mechanicals for the pop-up stopper. Coming out the back of the drain assembly is the ball rod. It's also called the pivot rod or the horizontal rod. This is what raises and lowers the stopper in the sink. Attached to the ball rod is the clevis strap, and the clevis strap connects to the lift rod, which is the part that you pull to open and close the sink stopper. Underneath the drain assembly, you'll have the P-trap, and attached to the P-trap will be your wall tube, which connects to a trap adapter, normally at the back wall. If your P-trap is too low to engage the tailpiece on the drain assembly, you'll have an extension tube to bridge that gap. The two main areas where you'll have the clog are either in the P-trap, but most likely it'll be up here in the drain assembly.
So the way the ball rod works in activating the stopper is the part of the rod here past the ball goes into the drain assembly. So it goes in through the back here and it engages the stopper through this hole in the bottom of the stopper. So when the stopper is in here, and the ball rod's inside, it now engages the stopper. So as the ball rod pivots, it opens and closes the stopper. And the way it pivots is it's attached, remember, to that clevis strap and the rod. And that rod is what you're pulling up and down up top behind the faucet. And that activates the stopper. Well, the problem we have is the pivot rod and the stopper take up a whole lot of room inside the pipe here. And that's not normally a problem when all you have is, well, water going down there. But when you start adding things like toothpaste and hair and jewelry and Q-tips and whatever else gets in there, it hangs up on all these parts, and over time, more and more things get caught in that, well, in that bird's nest that you're creating in there until there's just no more space for the water to get past. Well, now you can also get stuff stuck down in the P-trap down below, and over time it can also keep accumulating stuff until you have a clog down there. Now that you know how it works and where to look for the clog, let me show you how to clean it out.
A few items you'll need are something to catch the water in when you take the pipes apart, a couple rags for cleaning up, a pair of gloves because, yeah, it can get nasty inside those pipes, a couple new slip washers, and I'll explain about these shortly, a pair of channel lock pliers, and that $3 tool I mentioned. It's called a zip out or a zip it, but that's really a brand name. It's also known as a drain weasel, hair snake, drain tool, things like that. And then also maybe this cleaning brush for pipes. Now this is optional, and I'll talk about this later.
Now I'll put a link below to a 3-pack of these Zip-Its, but you can find them at any hardware store like Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart. I've even seen them at grocery stores. It's just a thin, flexible plastic strip with these little barbs up and down the sides, and these barbs are what snags and all that nasty hair and gunk and pulls it out of the drain. Now for the 3-pack link below, it works out to about $2 each. At Home Depot, you can just buy one for like $3. Now you may also need a pair of channel lock pliers, which you'll see in the video. And there's one other item I kind of want to show you. This thing's here. This brush here, and I'll put a link to it below, is great for cleaning out the pipes, and we're going to use this in the video. This is actually for cleaning out your lint trap areas of your clothes dryer, but it works great for this, and you'll see that in the video also. Since I always get comments about not wearing gloves in my videos, I heeded your comments, and I put some gloves on today. Now the first step, get something to catch all that nasty water in that's going to come out when we clear the clog. Now, if you have not cleared the water out of your sink, take into consideration the amount of water that's in there plus the water that's in your P-trap, because you need to make sure you have a bucket big enough to catch all that water. Because the last thing you want to do is have a quart-sized container where you got 2 gallons of grossness coming out of there. So just make sure you get something big enough. In this case, my sister's mixing bowl works really well. Now before I get into the gross part, if you find the content I'm putting out there is helpful, now would be a really nice time for you to tap on that thumbs up like button and subscribe to my channel. Okay, back to it.
Place the container directly underneath the P-trap. Now you're going to disconnect the P-trap. To do that, you'll loosen these 2 slip nuts. You should be able to do it with your hands, but sometimes they're on there pretty tight, or they got corroded and difficult to get off. If that's the case, use your large pliers to loosen the nuts. If you're dealing with the plastic pipes, like I have here, be careful not to squeeze too tight or you may damage the nuts and or the drain pipes. Now they also do come in metal instead of plastic, so you may have the metal ones. Once you get the nuts loose, support the P-trap with one hand while you fully remove the nuts. If you don't, the trap is going to crash down into your container, and it's full of water, which will splash up onto you and all over the place. And I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be mountain fresh spring water, so you really don't want it getting all over you. Once the P-trap is disconnected, pour the water that's in it into your container and then set it off to the side. Be prepared, there may be nasties hanging off the extension tube and the wall tube. This is what I call the gag factor. Now you need to clear out the area around the ball rod. This is most likely where the cause of the clog is located. To remove the ball rod, you'll remove this retaining nut on the back of the drain assembly, which is holding the ball rod in. If it's plastic, like this one, you may be able to loosen it by hand. If it's the metal type, you're going to need a small pair of channel lock pliers. Just don't squeeze too hard because you can deform the nut and the nipple, or you could actually break the nipple completely off. Then you're going to need to replace the entire drain assembly, which is a video for another day. Now once you have loosened the retaining nut, don't pull the ball rod out yet. First, pivot the rod down to raise the stopper in the sink. Then hold the stopper while you pull the ball rod out. If you don't do that, the stopper is going to fall in and it's going to be a little difficult to get out. But if you don't grab the stopper first, no worries. You're just going to need something to get underneath it to lift it up. You know, like a tiny screwdriver, a knife, or a razor blade or something. Once again, there may be a bunch of nasties hanging off of the stopper. So if you gag easily, prepare yourself. And this is another reason why you really should be wearing gloves. Now inspect the end of the ball rod because they do rot away over time, and if it's not long enough to engage the opening in the bottom of the stopper, then the stopper won't open and close properly. Also, be careful when pulling a ball rod out. Some brands have little plastic washers on the front and back of the ball. If you don't see them, they may be inside the nipple or maybe inside the retaining nut. Just don't lose them if you have them, because if you do, you're going to have a leak later on. Now, if yours doesn't have those little washers, don't worry, not all brands do.
Now you're going to take your zip it and you're going to run it down the drain and out the bottom. Now you may need to work it up and down a few times to get everything out. Just make sure, remember, that pan is underneath. So push this down, it's going to come out the bottom and bring it back up. See, as you see, all the stuff that's starting to come out. Now you're not going to get everything with the zip it. There's still going to be a lot of stuff inside that drain. So at that point, the best thing to use is that cleaning brush and just run that down through the drain and out the bottom. This will get all the extra stuff out of there. Okay, here's a little secret. If you don't have a zip-it or a brush and you need to clear that out, one thing you can use is just take some paper towels, wad it up so it fits snug inside the drain. Now I always just wet it a little bit, put it in the drain. Now you want something to push it down with. You can use a stick, you can use a wooden spoon handle, you can use your sister's toothbrush, but you just want to make sure whatever it is, it's long enough to push it all the way through. Otherwise you're going to get paper towels stuck in your drain. So just take those, push it all the way down until it comes out the bottom. And do that a couple times.
You're also going to want to clean off that stopper and clean out all that crud out of the P-trap.
Before you put everything back together, there's one more step. Take that zip-it and run it through the wall tube, just to make sure that there's nothing in there which will slow your sink from draining properly. Just don't do it the paper towel thing down there, because you don't want the paper towels breaking up and clogging up your drain pipes. Of course, you can always just loosen this nut and then pull the wall tube out and clean it that way also.
If you want to check the drain to make sure you got it clean, the easiest way to do that is just take a light and put it in the cabinet underneath the drain pipe. Now, turning on the flashlight on your phone works great for this. Here I used a light from my camera. Then just go up top, look down the drain, and you can see what's inside. And this one looks pretty good.
Now, one thing I do when I remove the P-trap and extension tubes is to replace a slip washer. This is simply a nylon or rubber washer at the slip nut. That's this washer right here. You're going to have a couple different sizes of washers. The tailpiece on your drain assembly is going to be 1 1/4 inches. All the other pipes, like the P-trap, extension tube, wall tube, etc., they're most likely going to be 1 1/2 inches. To take the existing washer off, just slide the nut down and pull it off with the washer. Now this one's going to be a little difficult because of all the buildup on the tailpiece. I'll have to clean all this off first. Now this is a metal pipe. The plastic ones don't normally get too bad like this. Once it's clean, you can just pull it all off. Now the washer that goes on here needs to be what's called a transition washer, to go from 1 1/4 inch pipe of the tailpiece to 1 1/2 inch pipe. Now you can't just use a 1 1/2 inch washer. This is a 1 1/2 inch washer. The hole in the center is 1 1/2 inches to fit over, well, a 1 1/2 inch tube. Now you'll notice that when I try to put it on this pipe, well, it's too big and falls off. Well, because, well, that tube's only 1 1/4 inches. So we need this. This is a transition washer. The hole in the center is 1 1/4 inches, but the washer is wider on the outside to cover for a 1 1/2 inch pipe. This is what you'll use on your tailpiece coming from your drain to the P-trap, or from your tailpiece to the extension tube if you have an extension tube. Now there is a right and a wrong way to install the washer. There's a flat side of the washer, and there's a beveled side. The flat side goes against the nut. You put the nut on first, then the washer goes on with the flat side of the washer towards the nut. The beveled side of the washer will go down to fit into whatever pipe you're attaching. I'll just slide it up out of the way for now. And if you notice, the washer doesn't fall off like the other one did. That's because, well, the hole in this washer is made for 1 1/4 inch pipes. Now this is a common type and size of drain pipes for bathroom vanity drains, but there are some exceptions. Now you may have 1 1/4 inch pipes that go all the way to the wall tube instead of transitioning to 1 1/2 inch. In that case, all your slip washers will be strictly for 1 1/4 inch pipe and not the transition ones I showed here. And if you're not in the US, your setup and sizes may be different, especially if you're in a country that's on the metric system. And in lieu of a P-trap in Europe, I've seen what's called a bottle trap. Also, if you're installing vanity sinks or drains that you bought from IKEA here in the US, you're going to notice that those are a little different right underneath the sink also. So just keep in mind that this may cover the majority of bathroom sink drains here in the US, but it's not going to be the same for every situation out there. And if your luck is anything like mine, then this video won't be anything like what you have. But I hope it is. Then you're going to install the P-trap. Now the P-trap only goes on one way. You'll notice there is a long side and a short side. The long side goes onto the drain tailpiece, or onto the extension tube if you have an extension tube. Now there's no extension tube here, so the P-trap goes directly onto the tailpiece for the drain assembly. The short side goes onto the wall tube. Now you saw how I put a slip washer onto the tailpiece there, and that's going to go into the P-trap. Well, if you have an extension tube, you're also going to need, besides that transition washer from the tailpiece to the extension tube, you're going to need a 1.5 inch slip washer on the bottom of the extension tube where it goes into the P-trap, because both of those are 1.5 inches. Now the bevel part of the washer fits into the bevel inside here. When you put this one on, you'll slide the washer down and it'll fit right inside there. Now on the short side, there is no washer between the P-trap and the wall tube. The wall tube is beveled and the inside of the P-trap is beveled, and they just fit together to form a seal. So once you put the nut on and tighten it down, it'll just seal that joint. Now I'm not going to tighten it down just yet because we still need to do some adjusting of everything. And if you remove the wall tube, you're going to need to keep that nut a little bit loose also, so you can move the wall tube in and out, just so this end of the P-trap lines up straight here. Now you don't want it to be cockeyed or have to force anything. After this goes on here, then slide the washer and nut down and screw on the nut, leaving it slightly loose. Just make sure not to cross thread any of these nuts. It's easy to screw up the threads since it's, all just plastic. Now once everything is attached, just make sure nothing is forced, because you don't want this pulling back on the P-trap or the P-trap pulling back on the tailpiece. You want everything to fit together without any tension at all. And once everything is lined, go ahead and tighten everything. Just make sure that the extension tube or tailpiece is inside the P-trap far enough for a good seal. Now if you notice, the P-trap has a section here on the end. It's about 1.5 inches long. It's a little bit wider, and that'll allow for some adjustment up and down. Now you want it in there far enough, at least 1/2 inch or more. Then make sure everything is snugged down. Don't forget the nut for the wall tube if you took the wall tube off. And the nuts just need to be hand tight. If you're not strong enough to tighten them by hand to stop the leaking, then you can just use your channel locks and give it a slight additional turn after you hand tighten them. Maybe 1/8 of a turn more. Just a little bit, because they are plastic, so they will strip out if you're not careful. Next, you want to reinstall the pop-up drain stopper. If you look at the stopper, that opening on the bottom may be offset to one side. You want that opening to the back. So when you line it up, you don't want it to the side, you don't want it to the front, you want it to the back. So line it up and then drop it in.
And since the stopper is all the way down, to get the rod into that hole in the bottom of the stopper, you may need to tilt it slightly down into the drain. Once it's all the way in, tilt the ball rod up and down just to make sure it's activating the stopper. Also, slightly pull on the stopper just to verify that it's, actually attached to the ball rod. Then tighten down the retaining nut on the ball rod. Now you want to snug it to create a good seal, but if you over tighten it, you 1, risk stripping out the threads, and 2, you'll make it just too hard to move the lift rod up and down.
All that's left is to test it to make sure it's draining properly and there are no leaks. And you're going to do this in 2 different ways. First, just turn the water on as normal with the stopper up and open. Now check all the fittings to make sure that there are no leaks. Then you want to do what I call a power drain. That's where you completely fill up the drain pipes with water. And to do this, just close the stopper and let the sink fill up. The reason you do this is because when you simply run the water, it travels along the bottom of the drain pipes. But what if the area that's not sealing is, say, at the side or the top of the fitting? That's why you want to fill the pipes completely with water so you can test for any leaks. Once the sink is full, open the stopper and inspect all the pipes and fittings for leaks. Now you can open the stopper from down below by just, pivoting the ball rod. And now, this is how your sink should be draining. The reason I say to change out the slip washers is because if they're worn or nicked, they won't seal properly and you'll end up with a leak. And since you already have it all apart, a couple dollars for new washers really is a no-brainer. Now, of course, it is possible that the clog is further down your drain pipes and not in the pop-up stopper, the pop-up drain assembly or in the P-trap, in which case you're going to need to have the drain pipes snaked out. But in 14 years, I think I've only had 1, maybe 2 instances where the clog was in the drain pipes further down the line. Normally, clogs like that, you see those in kitchen sinks, not bathroom sinks. Now, if you've encountered something different and unusual in cleaning out your bathroom sink, drop a comment down below, especially if it's really gross, because, we can never have too many things that make us gag. And if you like the content I'm putting out there, I'd appreciate it if you give that thumbs up, like icon a tap, and subscribe to my channel for more helpful home repair videos. Now, I do want to take a moment to give a big thank you to all of you that have subscribed to my channel so far. As we're coming at the end of this year, and my first year and a half since I started this channel, 5,000 of you have subscribed, and that outpouring of support is greatly appreciated. But now for my shameless plug. By the end of next year, 2025, my goal is to have 15,000 subscribers. I know, it took a year and a half just to reach 5,000, so an additional 10,000 in 1 year may seem like a tough goal, but I have confidence in y'all. Plus, I'll do my part to push myself to put out more content more often to help with that goal. So, if you haven't already subscribed, now would be a really good time to do so. Go ahead. I'll wait. Go ahead. Come on. You know you want to. Push it. Thank you. Also, if I reach 15,000 by the end of next year, I'll select 10 subscribers at random and send you some nice stuff from my merchandise line. I might even conduct monthly drawings also all year long. So subscribe and get in on the drawings. And speaking of merchandise, if you want to get your hands on some Woggers Way merch, I'll put a link below to my merchandise shop. And if you'd like to win some free merchandise, I'll put a link to my website page which tells you just how to do that. And apparently I'm link happy today, so before I go, I'll throw a link to one of my other engaging videos up here for you shortly, right up over here. So thumbs up, subscribe, get some merch, and look, hey, there's a link to subscribe. Hey, I promise, that's my last link. Once again, this is Uncle Brian saying thank you for tuning into my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Like that one. Bye now.